The cosmos of the Force, that mystic energy field that interconnected all life, did not break, but exploded like glass. Millions of Jedi destinies, the guardians of peace, fragmented at the same time by Order 66, a secret contingency protocol. A collective cry of suffocated life resonated from the stars to the temples. In distant battlefields, under alien skies stained with the fire of blasters, the clone soldiers, once loyal comrades, turned their white helmets into automaton. Their arms, once raised in defense, now pointed at their generals. The loyal blue of the blasters turned treacherously cold. Basically, it was the interrupt that turned the clones against the Jedi and doomed the Order in an instant. Where the military brotherhood had flourished, only silence and the acrid smoke of powder remained. In the sacred halls of the Jedi Temple, the wise council left a frozen vacuum, the omen of an imminent extinction. Among the titanic trees of Kashyyyk, where the light filtered like hesitant promises, Master Jedi Yoda felt the dark cry, a wave of agony in the Force. The mystical energy field that binds all living beings. Even before the first blast, a common energy beam echoed. Without hesitation, two clone soldiers raised their rifles against the small figure. Two identical bodies fell to the moss-covered ground. The wisdom of millennia condensed in his emerald gaze as he beheld the vast green horizon. The end, ominous and inexorable, had begun. His path took him away from this cosmic conflict to Dagobah, a primordial swamp that smelled of ancient moss and unfathomable secrets, where the dense shadow, woven by the planet's own nature, could hide even the luminous presence of a being like him. The key was that he concealed himself in a world saturated with dark side energy to mask his own flame, a light in the vastness that, in another form, would have been a target. In the resplendent depths of Utapau, where geysers of energy danced above subterranean lakes, Master Jedi Obi-Wan Kenobi, recently victorious over General Grievous, was betrayed. Commander Cody, his loyal clone companion, received the Order 66, a secret directive from Emperor Palpatine to exterminate all Jedi, and without hesitation, the tank turned, its cannons deploying. The explosion sent him flying through the air, and the once brilliant general fell sharply towards the dark waters that extended beneath the alien surface, his apparent demise dissolving into bubbles. But amidst the grip of the cave and the murmur of the currents, Obi-Wan emerged once more. No longer as the heroic strategist the universe knew, but as a specter, a wandering shadow. Think of it like this. From a war hero to a fugitive in a matter of minutes, and his first and most crucial decision was to protect Luke. This ghost of the desert, now known as Ben, exiled himself voluntarily in the desolate dunes of Tatooine, a silent vigilante under the relentless gaze of a double sun, waiting for the moment to protect the child whose surname, Skywalker, was the key to hope and also a dangerous magnet for darkness. Dancing flames, shards of laser light slashed through the penumbra, and a master, Depa Billaba, stood as the last wall of existence against the relentless onslaught. Meanwhile, Caleb, a young Padawan, a Jedi apprentice under the guidance of a master, fled in desperation through the forest. His proper name, Dume, seemed to fade into the air, an unutterable echo of what had been. On the verge of emotional and physical collapse, this child, a witness to the unimaginable horror of the Jedi extermination, changed the skin of his own history. He abandoned the Padawan, a figure of devotion and power, and in its place was born the Wanderer, a vagabond without home or known identity, destined to navigate the shadows of the galaxy without a visible goal. Basically, his survival was an equal, forged threat due to the selfless sacrifice of Depa, who fell defending him, and that guilt, profound and persistent, followed him like an inseparable shadow throughout the years. The dense forest that hid him transformed into a scar that never healed, a living monument to trauma and the forgotten promise of an order. In the hold of the ghost ship, a bastion unshakable and steadfast, the fugitive known as Kanan Jarrus discovered something more profound than a refuge. He found family, in eyes that did not formulate the questions that the past had left unanswered, but instead offered implicit trust, hands that did not judge his scars, but extended themselves in unconditional loyalty. In young Ezra, with his impulses and his wonder at the universe, Kanan glimpsed a small mirror of what he himself once was, a Padawan in training an apprentice of the Force, the mystical energy that unites all life in the galaxy, granting its users extraordinary abilities. In the end, when the fires of battle enveloped their floating sanctuary in an apocalyptic inferno, a destruction that threatened to devour them all, Kanan, with a resolution that would have honored the ancient masters, contained the onslaught. He offered his body and the entire Force to oppose the advance of death, choosing not only a physical shield, but a resplendent wall of light. The key is his redemption. In that supreme act, he did not only choose to protect his own, but also to die for them, thus sealing his ethos to the very essence of what it means to be a Jedi, a guardian of peace and life, even at the threshold of his own demise. In the nascent hues of a galactic twilight, as smoke swirled through the labyrinthine corridors of what once was a bastion of peace, Kellyan BQ, a venerated Jedi Master and expert in the Force and combat, moved with a purpose born of desperation and ancient judgments. His imposing figure, a silhouette against the flickering emergency lights, cast a shadow while he weighed options, each one a threshold to an uncertain destiny, not only for himself but for the small cargo secured to his garments. The small one, Gogu, the young achiever, a being 1 year and long-lived, profoundly attuned to the very fabric of the Force, remained in silence. His enormous and obscure eyes wide open with ineffable sorrow, a tiny whimper trapped in his small body as the distant and fierce roar of Naboo's starfighters resounded through the desolate facade of the temple. These were the first tremors of Order 66, the secret directive to exterminate the Jedi, shaking the very foundations of the galaxy. Consider it this way. Without Kellyan's unwavering determination and skill, Gogu would not have survived the onslaught to ultimately cross paths with Din Djarin. Amidst the chaos, as the stars began to fall, two fragile yet powerful heartbeats, a master and his beloved pupil, vanished together into the cosmic night that was unfolding, escaping the conflagration. Quinlan Vos, the enigmatic ghost archivist, was never an inert figure of marble. His essence vibrated like a shadow in perpetual motion, elusive and ethereal. Equipped with psychometry, that rare ability to perceive the past of objects and places, with just a touch as an infallible compass, and the vast underworld of the galaxy, the intricate webs of crime, and the forgotten recesses of society. As a map, Quinlan not only survived, but also wove an intricate web of secret paths. The Way, that clandestine path of escape and salvation for children sensitive to the Force, was not an institutional creation, but was born in the dark alleys and silent footsteps of those who defied the imperial yoke. Each child rescued from the clutches of the Empire, each young seed of the Force protected, represented a spark of vibrant hope in the suffocating darkness of war. Basically, Quinlan operated in the gray, think of it that way, transcending the strict lines of good or evil in the moral twilight, and thus kept alive the flame of clandestine rescue of those sensitive to the Force, a beacon in the darkest night of the galaxy. On the contaminated planet of Bracca, amidst the mountains of piled up scrap and under a ferocious rain that corroded the metal with perpetual oxide, young Cal Kestis hid. Not just because of the precarious position of the scavenger, but due to the weight of an inescapable past. The shadows of Order 66, the secret purge of the Jedi initiated by Palpatine, still loomed over him, and the visceral memory of the death of his master, Siri Junda's master, Jaro Tapal, was a recurring nightmare that disturbed his tranquility. His existence, until then, had been a perpetual flight, a forced denial of his true Jedi nature. But the fortuitous appearance of an old lightsaber, a ceremonial and vital tool for the Jedi, along with a secret from his lineage that he could no longer conceal, and the inevitable confrontation with an Inquisitor, an agent sensitive to the Force dedicated to hunting down surviving Jedi, forced a catharsis. It was in that crucible of fear and revelation that Cal's flight transformed into a path with purpose. The key was his evolution from an apprentice Padawan, a Jedi learner who had barely begun his training, to an active guardian in a long and silent war, a struggle to preserve the legacy of the Force. His gaze, once elusive, now glimpsed the horizon, ready to unravel the mysteries that awaited him. The ancient holograms, fluttering with dusty light within the cavernous archives, the sacred halls of the historical registry, not necessarily physical but sustained in the collective memory, spoke of Si Junda A Jedi Master whose survival of the feared Order 66, the secret extermination protocol, was less a triumph than a persistent agony. For her, escaping the initial purge was not a victory. Instead, the implacable Imperial tutelage broke the dike of her spirit, unleashing a torrent that cast her Padawan, Tilla, her young apprentice, into the icy shadows. A fate that haunted C for years like a spectral Kyber crystal. Eventually, as the galaxy groaned under the heel of the Empire, C finally lifted her weary eyes, finding a renewed purpose in the struggle, a fire rekindled by a resolution almost forgotten. Her eventual confrontation with the very Lord Sith Vader, as it is woven into the mythic tapestry, became a monumental and dignified fall, a sacrifice that, in essence, sealed her personal account of atonement. Yes, at a great cost. But her final echo resounded, an undeniable echo, a legend that guided and inspired countless other emerging rebels. When the starship vibrated with an ominous tension and the boots of the clone soldiers marched in a macabre geography of forced obedience, Captain Rex, a friend from timeless eras, trembled, his loyalty compromised by a poisoned mandate. Protocol 66, activated by the ominous voice of the Emperor. Ahsoka Tano, confronting the most intimate betrayal, did not hesitate. She chose the impossible surgery in the midst of the frenetic galactic chase, a desperate dance to awaken the seed of lethal obedience in the mind of her ally. On the thin metal of the cockpit, a blue clone helmet fell with a lugubrious echo, and in an act of profound cunning, two brave souls, now ghosts of an extinct past, pretended their own tomb, disappearing from the Imperial records, becoming myths before history could forget them. It was then, at the twilight of the Old Republic, that the voice of Fulcrum, a whisper in the darkness, began to sow the first seeds of existence in a rebellion still in its infancy. The key is that, having deviated from the orthodoxy of the Jedi Council, Ahsoka Tano, under this new veil, became a key piece of intelligence, a shadow in the darkness, guiding those who dared to defy the veil of tyranny. Baylan Skoll, an archivist with an unyielding demeanor, remained steadfast while the Great Purge, known among the few survivors as Order 66, the planned annihilation of the Jedi, decimated the Order, their lights fading into the Force without him plummeting into the abyss alongside them. His temperament and ancestral oasis amidst the tempest had already shifted in the preceding millennium to the logical path of a pragmatist. The sacred dogma replaced by the brutal efficacy of survival, observing how the pillars were demolished. He did not seek the sanctuary of exile nor the abyss of darkness. Instead, he took under his wing an apprentice, the enigmatic Shin, and together they tread a narrow path between both extremes, forging their own way without the guidance of the light or the seduction of the shadows. Asterisk, asterisk. He believed survival was achieved through adaptation, not hiding asterisk, asterisk, a philosophy branded into his being. Thus, on the distant planet of Paidia, a world in another galaxy, he heard a call echoing across cosmic distances, an invitation that did not emanate from the duplicitous voices of the Sith nor the noble, now silenced, whisper of the Jedi. It was something more, a new melody in the concert of the universe, promising to redefine power. Jocasta knew, the venerable keeper of the Jedi archives, who guarded the most sacred secrets of the Jedi Order, moved like a shadow through the dark alleys of Coruscant, her espionage barely a whisper in the heavy air. In the very essence of what she carried, a treasure that would not falter, were the names of children who were still unaware that they were sensitive to the Force, their destiny as future Jedi still uncertain and, for many, perhaps already canceled. With her pulse racing fiercely in her throat, a visceral alarm that forecast the annihilation of everything she loved, the ancient Jedi Master advanced, each step a prayer for the survival of the Order. But the treachery had taken deep root, and the crimson eye of Darth Vader's lightsaber, the fearsome executor of Order 66, the secret purge of the Jedi initiated by Emperor Palpatine, closed abruptly the door to any hope of escape. Although her body fell, inert against the cold metal, her precious seeds, that vital list, did not. Basically, her list was an essential factor for future attempts to reconstruct the Jedi Order, a latent spark in the galactic darkness. Eth Koth, the wise Jedi Master from the planet Ethor, formerly a member of the Council, had laid down his brilliant lightsaber, a symbol of an era extinct and a path he had abandoned in exchange for the humble and silent comfort of a nursery. In the oppressive darkness that followed, Order 66, the new galactic empire, a shadow that suffocated freedom in every corner of the galaxy, perceived with an unsettling instinct any faint fragrance of hope, any spark of life that defied its absolute dominion. It was then that Darth Vader, the fearsome fist of the Emperor and the embodiment of the dark side, descended upon that hidden sanctuary like a fatal eclipse, his monolithic silhouette projecting an impenetrable darkness over the apparent calm. The air grew thick with the imminence of tragedy as the faint light of a home, dearly gained, clashed with the icy coldness of his crimson blade. A brief and uneven duel erupted, a desperate dance against the relentless dark side, interrupted only by the piercing wail of a newborn, a sound of pure innocence that resonated in the mortal silence. Vader's blade not only cut the air, but also tore apart a home, dismantling the fragile foundations of a private peace that, in essence, could not save anyone from the Empire's implacable reach. This regime, insatiable in its tyranny, collected endings with the same obsession with which others accumulated ancient relics, ensuring that no existence, not even the most intimate, could germinate. In the icy depths of a hidden Imperial installation, a specter danced in the penumbra, a cruel fabrication of holographic light that served as a perfect lure for the very bones and stasis of Jedi Master Luminara Unduli, a macabre display suspended in the void. The Galactic Empire, in its arithmetic of extermination, had converted the revered image of the Miraluka into an insidious trap, a beacon of hope for the desperate who still believed in the survival of the Order. Think of it, in the polished crystal of their vision, the hope, that flame that the Jedi maintained with such faith, lit up only once in a while in a cycle of ambushes, each new victim a silent addition to the toll. Basically, they used her figure as a lure of false salvation, ambushing and annihilating any surviving Jedi who, with a broken heart, sought comfort or counsel from a master they believed to be alive. When the illusion finally shattered, with the shock of a blast or the hum of a lightsaber against the trap, nothing remained but the icy echo of deception, the void of a broken promise, and the certainty that even in death, heroes could be profaned to feed the machinery of darkness. Among the silent echoes of ancient sanctuaries, where dusty winds swept the ruins of forgotten civilizations, Master Eno Cordova, a Jedi archaeologist keeper that is, a guardian and interpreter of galactic history and its mysteries, moved like a devoted shadow. His mission transcended mere collection. Cordova hid essential knowledge, the pillars of ancestral wisdom of the Force, in these emotive temples, disguising them with the meticulousness of someone hiding a sacred fire under a layer of damp stone, ensuring that his legacy persisted for those who possessed the sight. This labor of preservation was an act of faith against the imminent darkness. The strike, that galactic purge known as Order 66, the secret directive of the Emperor to exterminate all Jedi, reached him in his solitary devotion, but not his ingenious work. He thought that, with each hidden clue, each subtly altered hieroglyph or decontextualized star map, he preserved vital routes of knowledge for those who came after, guiding future seekers through the veil of forgetfulness and despair. His clues, silent beacons, awaited the worthy. Thus, his footprints continued marking the path long after his own trail was erased. Gungi, the small Achavista Lama, emerged from the cosmic shadows to pause in the primordial depths of Kashyyyk, his native world. There, a lightsaber glowed vividly in his furry hands, illuminating the dense foliage, while a young Wookiee, full of ancestral questions, resonated among the imposing shika trees, desperately seeking the roots of his tribe. The nights were filled with crackling fires and the deep howls of the Wookiees, a sonic tapestry of survival and defiance. Basically, Gungi, with his presence in this forest refuge, symbolizes the Jedi innocence that, against all pessimism, survives the merciless blows of war and the annihilation of Order 66, the secret purge designed to eradicate the users of the Force. Each dawn is a fragile promise under the relentless scrutiny of the helmets that patrolled. a silent challenge of a small flame against the vastness of the scarred galaxy. Tatooine, the forgotten world that bore names and whispers, stretched its vast expanse under unforgiving skies, a silent canvas for the stories of the past. Here, among the dunes that stood like petrified waves, Nye, a Jedi survivor of Order 66, the secret purge of Force users orchestrated by the Emperor, offered silent comfort to those who dared to believe in something beyond mere survival. Her presence, a faint spark of the Force in the desert, brought hope to despairing souls, a barely perceptible light in the galactic darkness. But the echo of those acts, discreet as they were, could not escape the ears of the Galactic Empire, the new authoritarian hegemony seeking to eradicate any vestige of the Jedi. Soon, the shadow of the black boots of its agents stretched under the unyielding blaze of the white suns, inexorably tracing Nye's path. To exist within the Empire's sight meant almost certain doom, and the desert, once the greatest guardian of secrets, sometimes revealed them with indifferent cruelty, exposing Nye's fragile flame to the imminent dust. In the veiled annals of dissent, it was recorded that Fiend Ba, the Reverend Archivist, was the one who confronted darkness with a nearly mythical audacity, for he discovered the masquerade of Vade, that veil of ash that concealed a galactic truth that shook the foundations of the Empire, was, for him and for those who followed him, like touching a live wire, a revelation that electrified the spirit and sparked a glimmer of hope where only despair had existed. His finding, an echo of a tragic past, sparked a brief, ephemeral revolt, fleeting as a nocturnal call in the darkest confines of the galaxy, beautiful in its defiance, but useless in its ambition to evade the course of Imperial destiny. Nevertheless, the sharp eye, the infamous Crimson Blade wielded by the Empire's executor, the implacable axe of the galactic tyranny, and the personification of its will, extinguished the attempt with surgical precision, a lethal dance that did not tolerate defiance. Basically, despite the magnitude of his discovery, knowing the truth was not enough to deter this implacable force, whose darkness only deepened with each act of existence. Far from the echoes of the Jedi Temple, Kiak Infala, a seasoned archivist, guardian of millennia-old knowledge, sought silence in a riverine world, convinced of peace. But the galaxy, unrelenting, found those who perceived differently, to whom the Force, the energy that connects life, had entrusted sensitivity. The Jedi Purge, the extermination known as Order 66, was unfolding. Kiak did not evade his fate. His duel with Darth Vade, the Empire's executor, was a bridge between traditions. Kiak's impeccable technique, honed with the lightsaber, clashed with Vade's unyielding fury, a crude manifestation of the dark side. Each blow on the ground spoke of a deeper conflict, resonating with the clash of destinies. It seemed that time did not shield against the fate of the Jedi. The waters, once crystalline, now became tinged with blood, and with it flowed written lessons on the tip of lightsabers, marking the end of an era and the beginning of another. In the dimly lit and silent recesses of a forgotten archive, where the air was thick with the smell of damp stone and millennium-old dust, forgotten names by the Empire manifested as spectral echoes on the damp surfaces. We observed the slow, almost eventful, procession of Oppo Rensisis, the venerable Master Jedi, Despision of multiple scars, and Coleman K. Saj, the stoic Master Jedi Ungi, recognized for his mastery of presence in battle. They were inscriptions that, like ancestral or hopeful lichens, crept across humid walls. Each mark was a pulse, a heartbeat that insisted with mute and defiant tenacity. We still remain, the shadows, accomplices, and guardians to an equal degree of this hidden truth, watched over detailed inventories of those survivors of the massive extermination known as Order 66, the secret purge of the Jedi, the same ones who, for the most part, never revealed their end nor the secret of their escape. Basically, the list of the supposedly living in these records is a quirky mix of the reliable and the phantasmagoric, half-documented certainty and half a whispered rumor transmitted among the shadows, a truth as elusive as the very force that guided them. Order 66, that fateful mandate that marred the pride of the Jedi, pulverized not only the venerable structures of the ancient temple and its satellites, but also the illusory security of a galaxy at peace, yet it did not abolish the essence of their vocation. Despite the relentless annihilation, across the vast expanses of forgotten worlds, in the silent depths of hidden caves, amidst the mystical mists of emotive planets, and in the bustling dens of intergalactic Chathias, the ancestral wisdom and fierce will of the few survivors made their nest, germinating like seeds in ashes. From the total wreckage of a once glorious era, from the dolorous loss of nearly everything, emerged the few necessary planks to construct a fragile yet resilient raft called the future, a vessel of hope against the tide of tyranny that spread. The key is that these survivors were not mere refugees. They became the emotional and practical foundation for what one day could be a rebirth. Their existence forged the soul of what was to come. Amidst the silent devastation of the extermination that swept the galaxy, a subtle legend emerged, known simply as the Way, a vital pulse beating in the darkness. Its heartbeats were hidden houses without letters, anonymous refuges in forgotten worlds, and its signals, faint marks carved with a knife on worn doorposts or occasional hiding places, which only revealed directions to trained eyes. The routes of this intricate path changed like the wind, evading the oppressive shadow of the Galactic Empire, always one step ahead of its inquisitors. The key is to understand that basically, it was the clandestine path that moved those sensitive to the Force, both children born with the gift and surviving ex-Jedi, away from the brutal fist of the Empire, offering them a faint hope of survival in a hostile cosmos. Each silent station, each unsuspected step of the way, was imbued with a tacit promise, and the most comforting of all was the mark that murmured, "Quinlan was here," not a signature of vanity, but the unshakable guarantee that, despite all pessimism, the next fragile step of that winding path still existed, stretching towards a future uncertain yet possible. The Inquisitorious fortress rose like a Gothic scar above black waters, its towers, obsidian spires, piercing the tumultuous sky with the promise of an unfathomable doom. Within its icy walls, far from the light of any star, the Inquisitors did not seek repentance, but instead erased names of the few who still clung to clandestinity, each truth a lancet to the spirit. Swords of light, the scaled blades of the Inquisitors, Jedi hunters of the Galactic Empire, hung in the penumbra like unanswered questions, cutting through the silence with a calculated threat. Think that the hunt for the Jedi, initially an act of sudden betrayal to the heart of the Order, had become industrialized, transforming into a systematic and methodical persecution. For the Inquisitors, each captured survivor was more than a trophy. It was a living map they longed to unfold. A leaf of root with the trace of others who had escaped the Great Extermination, revealing the existence of hidden sanctuaries and desperations throughout the galaxy. He was not a Jedi, but his story was woven into the same fabric of galactic destiny, a tapestry now frayed by treachery. Rex walked among the cemeteries of bleached white helmets, silent echoes of a massacre that stained the memory of his brothers, while the air still vibrated with the shadow of Order 66, a secret protocol that forced clone soldiers to turn against their Jedi generals. He, however, broke the chain of obedience, an act of will contrary to the mandate of extermination, and struggled with the guilt of others, the weight of the atrocities his comrades had committed, oblivious to their own free will. Under the faint and ominous light of a scarred planet, his stoic figure watched over a former Padawan, a young Jedi apprentice who had miraculously evaded the purge. He offered her a fragile refuge, helping her to remain a faint spark of hope in the darkness that had devoured the Republic. Basically, this radical choice shows that not all clones were mindless executioners, but rather capable of insurrection against tyranny, preserving the spark of existence where others saw only desolation. Among forgotten colonies, where apathetic worlds drifted without being claimed by the heart of civilization, two figures, the stoic Zubin and the perceptive Kanoi, exchanged the solitude of their hiding place for the fragile promise of a temporary community. In a dusty agricultural settlement, under the eye of a moribund sun that projected long, deceptive shadows, they mingled with the locals, their lightsabers, the sacred symbols of the Jedi, now relics of a bygone era deeply hidden. The Force, that omnipresent energy that unites all things, always tense in their intention. Each dawn was a silent census of the fears that loomed, a silent count of the known costs that had been paid in the struggle. Each night, the count of their own vigilant observations became more audible in the quiet. The Inquisitors, somber agents of the Empire sensitive to the Force, tasked with eradicating the remaining Jedi, probed the air like old predators, their psychic gazes scouring the bounds of the galaxy with patient tenacity. The key was that, although they found brief solace in these forsaken communities, where camaraderie offered a brief respite, they never found permanent salvation. The shadow of the Empire stretched inexorably, promising that their escape was only a postponement, not a true escape. In the guise of Kenobi, an improvised sanctuary recounts the voyage of the galaxy, the air dense with the weight of millenary dust and the patina of ancient stone, the crepuscular light of the desert filtered, dancing upon an irregular surface. There, barely distinguishable amidst the dunes and oblivion, a name had been traced with care. Almost a whisper. Sela Elo. There was no solemnity of a Jedi mausoleum here, nor the grandiose epitaph that honored a fallen master. Only the urgent mark, a calligraphy of desperation and futurity. It is in these humble tracks and the icons that nobody misses, where true existence often resides. Basically, this inscription is not just a gravestone. It is a tangible proof that the purge of Order 66, the secret extermination of the Jedi, was not as complete as the Imperial history we were led to believe, revealing that many more evaded the edge of extinction than the official records state. Sometimes, to survive is not to achieve glory, but simply to exist in a place where time and forgetfulness have ignored, waiting to be discovered by those with eyes to see. In the confines of a forgotten settlement, the twilight barely penetrated the dusty windows, bathing in gold the dust that covered the ground. There, Mil-Al and Vives Teague, two of the few Jedi Masters of the Force and Guardians of Galactic Peace, who escaped Order 66, the secret purge of Emperor Palpatine against the Jedi Order, shed their worn and tattered Jedi tunics. With almost ritualistic movements, they hung these monastic garments like discarded skins, a silent echo of a life that no longer existed. Their hands, once accustomed to wielding lightsabers, blades of concentrated energy, now adjusted heavy blast scopes, transforming them from contemplative monks into ruthless hunters. It was not a voluntary renunciation of their ancestors' legacy, but the harsh urgency of a merciless fate and the abyss of an existential void that drove them. It is thought that some survivors changed professions to avoid being recognized, or to avoid remembering, to escape the shadow of their past. On the dirty, laminated wanted posters that covered the walls of the local cantina, under the flickering glow of the neons, their own faces, once unblemished, appeared in the alphabet of pursuit and execution, a new language of survival where the prey and the hunter were, at times, the same desolate entity. From the depths of a forgotten sanctuary, the ancestral pulse of the vital force dissipated. D.L. Bedge, or Dean Ga, the sleeping archivist, a living echo of the glorious High Republic an era of peace and prosperity for the Jedi Order, began to awaken. For countless centuries, his essence had remained latent, a guarded heartbeat in that crystal capsule, unaware of the galactic voyage. Now, his eyes slowly opened to an unknown light, and his ears captured a foreign language, a mosaic of dialects and evolved languages, a dissonant symphony of an incomprehensible future. The same stars, immutable pillars of his cosmology, appeared to have changed position, stripping the universe of its familiarity. Basically, this venerable guardian had survived in stasis, but his awakening brought more questions than revelations, a sea of uncertainty that only deepened the mystery of the bygone times. The future, far from being a welcoming haven, manifested as a vast and silent museum, where he, a relic, was the most disconcerting artifact, a vestige of a forgotten age that offered perplexity rather than clarity. In the silent twilight of a forgotten vault, where the dust of centuries danced in the filtered beams of light, Luke Skywalker leaned over a vast array of scattered data, a chaotic collection of holographic cones, cryptic parchments, and flickering data terminals that contain times lists, times of possible Jedi survivors, asterisk maps, times of uncharted escape routes, and times fragments, times of ancient philosophical texts. He, an apprentice to none in orthodoxy and to all in necessity, searched feebly among these precious fragments of knowledge that Jocasta knew, the venerable Grand Master Librarian of the Jedi Temple, could not protect with her life from the Empire's onslaught and the nefarious Order 66. The secret directive that annihilated the Jedi Order. The blue light of a tablet illuminated his concentrated face as he established connections, uniting fragments of history. Basically, these fragments, rescued from oblivion, were the foundation of his desperate mission. From this almost extinct knowledge, from each decoded symbol and each captured coordinate, arose the first attempts times at reconstruction, followed by times trials, times that tested his mettle, but always driven by the persistent vision of a times dreamed of school times that rose from the ashes. The key was that the documentary legacy, incomplete as it was, nourished the reconstruction, although on its own it could not guarantee success, leaving the balance in the hands of the young idealist. The ancient holographic project flickers softly, projecting a thin, ethereal glow throughout the chamber of the archive, where dust motes dance in the perpetual twilight. The voice of the archivist, profound and resonant, imbued with the gravity of past events, begins to narrate. Order 66. That secret decree that ordered the extermination of the Jedi left a scar that traverses eras, visible scars in the silent Dagobah, in the Tatooine of twin suns, and in the forgotten hangars with graffiti. But this same wound, far from being an end, also marked a beginning. Each Jedi who survived ignited a solitary beacon, a faint flame that others would find in the darkest night. Thus, the new myth began. The voice softens, adopting a subtle, almost conspiratorial tone. Basically, it was not an end for the Force. The key is that it was, in essence, an elemental redistribution of that sacred fire towards hands disposed, yet prepared to guard it. Think about it. The spark of existence, though dispersed, never extinguished, ensuring that, even from the abyss of annihilation, the Jedi legend begins anew.